Welcome back to the On Adventure podcast. I'm Josh Self, and I'll be your host. My guest today is Matt Walker. It's not often that you come across someone that has mastered both psychology and the mountains, but literally Matt has done both. This was a very fun conversation that I had been working on for quite some time before Matt and I were able to connect and discuss the topics that we went through. With Matt's background, how he got into adventure, but ultimately what he finds in the greater purpose for why we do hard things. And again, with his background, his insights are really brilliant and invaluable. And it was a conversation that was certainly worth the wait. So without further ado, here's Matt Walker. Well, Matt Walker, welcome to the On Adventure podcast. We were talking a minute ago about how you and I got connected, and I think it's one of those just lucky moments. I don't know that there's any common connection between us. I was searching LinkedIn and the internet for someone with your credentials that land also in the adventure outdoor space, and you may know this already. There aren't many of those. You are swimming in very clear ocean with what you're doing. But that being said, it's I think will lead to a very interesting conversation for us today around the why behind adventure. And I'm loving the stuff that you're putting on social media right now as it relates and speaks to specifically to men's life. And so I'm sure we'll hit on all of those things today, but thank you for joining me in this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Josh. I look forward to our conversation and dialogue. I do. There are times you're correct. There aren't too many people connecting the dots between adventure and the psychology of adventure, applying the lessons learned from adventuring back to our personal professional lives. Sometimes I do feel like, am I swimming in an ocean where there isn't anyone else? because there are so few people doing that, connecting the dots there. That being said, I think that if you take the smallest step back from adventure narratives that are written from the perspective of the adventurer, you'll see these threads, but they're not expanded in any significant great way. And I think there's a significant space there to expand on that and to apply the learning. So let's look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, so why don't we start with just give a little bio about who you are, where you're at, and what it is that you're doing around adventure right now.
Yeah. So I am 48 years old, and I have been in the outdoor space, guiding and running expeditions and leading trips on every continent across the globe since I was 18. So I'm working on a number of years at this point, right? Almost 30 years of doing this, which is pretty wild to say that. And I live in the Cascades in Washington State, but I grew up in New Jersey and Texas. And so that's really, culturally, I'm from New Jersey and Texas, and I live in the Pacific Northwest. And I started as a mountain guide. I started at a young age, really as when I was 18, 19. I started guiding and had some incredible mentorship along the way. And then that parlayed into the invitations and opportunities to climb significant mountains and significant ranges throughout the globe. And I still do that today. I have a family with 2 kids, and they're 14 and 11. And so busy raising them. And as a father now, I hold that space between still adventuring and still being out in that space and in the world and climbing, while also the daily tasks of being a father and running a family and managing that. And so I'm in a unique position to hold both of those things. I have a master's degree in psychology, and my drive for that was really from adventuring and climbing and seeing the patterns of behavior. Yeah, seeing the patterns of behavior that was coming into the guiding world, the real why behind why people were, it was driving people to sign up for big expeditions and go on climbs. There was the topic that would come up of like the cocktail party conversation to summit, a specific mountain and the glory of that. But underneath that, one layer underneath that was the real driving why. And I realized early on that I wasn't suited to support that. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
went and got a master's degree in order to be able to support my clients in a deeper way, because they were continuing to come back and seeking and searching, but climbing a mountain on its own without some framework and guidance wasn't providing the learning and healing that they were really looking for.
Yeah. How old were you when you kind of had that realization?
And so after grad school, I realized that I had this opportunity to pull the two worlds together and specifically support men in that process. That there was a space where men needed to have the opportunity to be in nature, outside, steeped in challenge,
Mm-hmm.
in order to be able to then gain the clarity that they were seeking in the other areas of their life. That just thinking it through or talking it through alone wasn't enough, that there needed to be an experience that shifted their mindset. And part of that was also in unplugging from the world and attaching themselves to a significant challenge. I think one of the biggest challenges that we face right now as a culture is our digital attachment.
Yeah.
And that, and I'm not a Luddite by any stretch of the imagination, but that our digital attachment and digital addiction feeds a cycle that it can never be satisfied.
Mm.
And truly, one of the only ways I've found to gain clarity and to push the pause button or the reset is to physically remove myself from the noise. And adventure offers that, where you can't hold one foot in one space and one foot in the other at the same time. You have to be fully focused and engaged in the experience there in the moment. And it is additionally helpful that that space doesn't have good cell coverage. So those two things together give you the opportunity to be able to really pause and step back and reconnect. And I can go down the rabbit hole on this, but I believe one of the most significant challenges we have right now is that our lives are incredibly comfortable and we have significant ease beyond when our basic needs are met. We have significant ease available to us. We can basically pick any food we want to have it delivered to our house within 30 minutes.
Mm.
We can adjust the thermostat 1 degree for maximum comfort. We have all of our material needs are met and beyond. Our entertainment needs can be dialed into the exact specificity of genre and style and that we crave at that moment. So any discomfort becomes almost not only undesirable, but like unnecessary.
Mm.
And so that then when we do encounter significant discomfort in our lives in the world, we're not prepared for it.
Yeah.
And adventure is a space that thrives in that challenge of discomfort and creates the dynamic that pulls the individual forward and it expands their capacity for discomfort.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, what came to my mind is the person that adventures, what I like this phrase, the everyday explorer, not
Mm-hmm.
the guy that is getting in the newspaper for climbing the most difficult mountains in the world, but it's the guy like me that, and even you to some extent, you got a family, you got responsibilities, you got things that take up most of the hours of your days, but you still
Mm-hmm.
want to go pursue this thing. And it's in the
Yeah.
pursuit and the intentional pursuit that makes me curious about why do people do that? If and this is, I mean, this is like setting a softball pitch up to you, I think, a little bit,
Mm.
but if ease if ease feels good and the more of it we get, the more harmful it is to us, what is it in our DNA that drives us to still want to pursue the hard thing, to make ourselves suffer?
Yeah. Well, I think I'll draw an analogy, which is like a roller coaster amusement park ride is a contained, controlled experience. And it elicits, a physiological response. And that physiological response feels like fear, feels relief, feels adrenaline. Like you have a physiological response attached. Your heart rate goes up, your respiratory rate goes up, your eyes are dilated, you're taking information in. It feels scary, but it's entirely contained and controlled. And then when you come off the back end of that, you walk away with that experience, and yet it dissipates really rapidly because you have no attachment to it. It has no meaning. You have no skin in the game. And so I think what drives us is this realization unconsciously that we do thrive in challenge. I mean, it's this paradox of that uncertainty creates the most significant experiences in our life. And yet we attempt to operate in a way that has no uncertainty attached to it. Like we want everything to have a defined outcome. And if you look back on your life, like the most significant aspects of your life are tied to that uncertainty.
No question.
You know, the initial first date you had with your partner, totally uncertain.
Yep.
Having a child, complete uncertainty. The transition where you left schooling and decided to go into a vocation or go to a university, totally uncertain. And I think, you know, initially we stack the beginning stages of our lives with a significant amount of uncertainty, and that starts to shape and form, and we become comfortable with it. And then over time, our exposure to uncertain events decreases. And so when we're at later stages of life, we have to actually go and step out and create uncertainty to then create the next milestone or event in our life. Otherwise, we just become into the routine and treadmill. And that
Which is the
routine and treadmill
norm, is it not?
creates. It is the norm, and that's why we have a lot of resentment that occurs later in life, because we have done it to ourselves, where we have created treadmill experiences.
Yeah.
And so what that drive for adventure is, the way I see it, how it applies to individuals later in life, is that it becomes a testing ground and a place to remind themselves that uncertainty does provide vitality, and that they can then use that uncertainty in their current situation as to how they approach parenting, the shift in their relationships, should they decide to move somewhere else later in life, leave a job, start a new job. You know, these big questions the existential questions that people face, adventure offers the space to be able to try on that feeling again and be able to recognize that uncertainty really does open that door.
Do you think that in the formula for growth in our life, that uncertainty is an absolute necessary? Is there, or maybe another way to say that, is there a path towards personal growth without that?
No, I don't think there's any path towards personal growth without embracing uncertainty and the unknown.
Yeah.
I can say that unequivocally. I can think of no circumstance, because that's just not part of the human experience. It's not part of the natural world to have static stasis experiences. Like, we were constantly in motion. Things are always changing around us, and our ability to shift and be in change and uncertainty really determines our well-being. And we see people around us that have, you know, massive anxiety or depression or freeze as a result of not being able to operate in uncertainty. And it goes the other way. I want to clarify that, like, too much uncertainty in our lives is a disaster as well. And that becomes a humanitarian situation, where a humanitarian crisis, where, you know, if you don't have water, you don't know where your shelter is going to be, you don't have your food situation, you don't have clothing, your material needs aren't met. Those are uncertainties that are not tenable to mental health and well-being. You have to have those needs met. But once those needs are met, if you continue to operate that way, then you do lose that. You lose the skill, you lose the strength there. And then when challenge and difficulty arises, which it ultimately will, because that's the human experience, it becomes harder and harder to manage that. Yeah. And for me, adventure is, I approach adventure in the classic form as a climber. That's my trade. But I don't think adventure is owned by or trademarked through the North Face or through Outside Magazine or something of that nature. That adventure really is an approach and a way of being in the world. It's easy as a metaphor to apply it to the classic form of adventuring, but anyone delving into their hobbies or curiosities or interests, those develop into an adventure. The step forward you take in partnership with another, that's an adventure. The approach that you use as a parent, those are adventures if you look at them through this specific lens, which I call the 5 elements of adventure.
Yeah,
These
and
5 core pieces.
Read what you've written about those online. So I think that's a great time to dive into that of what are these key elements that make a good adventure. And I really love that distinction of the locale of the adventure is much less, I guess, maybe important than the components that make up the adventure. So tell me a little bit more about what you have in these components.
Yeah. So just to finish the last idea you just shared, which is adventure in the sense of the classic adventuring and for me, mountain climbing or something, these are lessons learned that influence and impact the most significant adventures of our lives, which are the ones that have longevity and connect with others, like our work, our relationships, our community. Like those pieces are the adventures that are actually the ones that truly matter.
Yeah.
The mountain climbing and the summiting doesn't matter at the end of the day. These other pieces truly do. So when I look at the idea of adventure, this applies both to a mountaineering expedition and to my partnership and how I raise my children and how I'm in community. And so that's in these 5 elements. And my belief is that the 5 elements, each of these pieces must be present in an adventure. And some of them we're really good at and others we're challenged by. And so when we feel disconnected, when we feel friction, oftentimes it's because one of these 5 pieces is missing or we're not engaging with it in a meaningful way. So the 5 elements are a high endeavor, uncertain outcome, total commitment, tolerance for adversity, and great companionship. And if we remain aware of those 5 things, it allows us to be able to have a framework and recognize that having adversity, having uncertainty, and needing to commit through challenges, like those pieces are natural. And we should expect that situations that demand and necessitate our presence through those things. So I think the other piece that adventure does is it gives a permission that challenge is to be expected and difficulty is to be expected. And in some sense, failure is to be expected.
So how did you come up with those?
I can't, while I was mountain guiding and kind of in the heart of the time that I was basically living out of the duffel bag from the age of 22 till about 28, 29 years old, and just duffel bags and plane tickets was kind of how, from one expedition to another. And it was during that time that I would just start to collect and take notes and notice things. I was reading a lot of different philosophies, taking in information and just trying to distill down. And so what was really going on? And I had a mentor at the time who kind of took a similar approach. And so I bounced ideas off of him. And that's where this idea kind of each of these pieces kind of got further and further refined. And I'm open to there being more, but I haven't figured out what they are yet, if there are. Each of the pieces, I think the five overlap just enough, kind of in a Venn diagram of all 5 of them, that I haven't found something that's kind of an outlier to that yet.
Yeah. So when you have those 5 and they do overlap, is that a flow state? Is that where you're really landing on the dot of doing the thing that brings you to life?
I would say you're at a place, I don't know if I would use the word flow state as much as I would say that you're in a place where you're fully present and you are agile and willing to become responsive as opposed to reactive. And then the final piece is around like kind of the great companionship aspect, is that there's meaning attached to it. So it's action with meaning. And that stems from having gone on a number of different massive, important expeditions on paper. And at this stage of my life, I have almost no memory of them other than some photos and the awareness that I did go on those expeditions. I was part of them. And because the part that was missing was the companionship, the relationship to someone else, and me being able to ask for support, to be able to give support, and just the bonding of friendship and camaraderie really negates whether the climb or the expedition, was the technicality of it, was really technical in nature and difficult, and whether it was a first ascent or not. Like I don't really remember those moments, but I remember who I was with and what we did.
That is really fascinating, and I'm sure you probably have some great stories of doing some really incredible climbs, but without that relationship piece, kind of putting a period on the end of the sentence. I would agree with that. I mean, I'm thinking back now through different things in my life that were on one level or another selfish pursuits. Not near as meaningful as the other things that come to mind that I've either done with one of my kids or done with a friend.
Yeah.
Those always stand out.
Yeah. And I'll throw a caveat in there, which is because I often get a little pushback on this idea, is the high endeavor, the activity that you're involved in could be solo in nature, solo in performance. Like, let's say you're running your first marathon.
Yeah.
You are the only one doing it. You're not running with anyone else. Those are your legs and your lungs and your mind, and it's your activity. But to get there, you didn't do it in a vacuum. There were other people along the way that were supporting you either in the moment, afterwards, or in the training leading up to it. So it's that whole experience in relationship with others that gives it that meaning, even though the actual activity may have been a solo performance.
Is that less so in the climbing world, where you really could train and execute a climb solo? Yeah.
No. I mean, I still need to rely on my partner to help me manage my household during those times, and to support me when I'm ill, or help me, create the days when I don't want to train, to create space for that to happen. No, I don't think, none of these things happen in isolation.
Yeah. Within the financial world, as a financial planner, I'd like to fall back on a phrase a lot, that you never make a financial decision in a vacuum. There's always this ripple effect of one thing leading to another. And while you may think you're making a tax decision, it's not just a tax decision. And I think that overlays pretty well with what you're saying, that at least meaningful adventure has that component as well, where it's not just the thing that you're doing, that there's a lot of support and interaction along the way. And it kind of brings another question to me also about, you mentioned 20 to 28 living out of a duffel bag, but how did you even get to the point of wanting to spend your days climbing? Is this something that was developed? Like, was it part of your family that you did this kind of stuff, or how did you get to that point at 20 years old?
Yeah, not at all. In fact, if I recall, I think I went camping with my family once, maybe twice.
Is that right?
So camping was not, outdoor pursuits is not at all part of my upbringing or part of my family. I took an Outward Bound course when I was in high school. That was incredibly influential for me and that was just another friend of mine had taken one, and she encouraged me to check it out. And so I did. And I kind of got turned on for the first time that my capability as a human was greater than my belief.
Ooh,
so
that's good. That's good.
Where like, until then, I was practicing on the athletic field, in soccer and baseball and tennis and things like that, but they were, really contained experiences. They were short. And then But being out in the mountains, I was being tested and I was exhausted. And then the realization that I wasn't done at all. I had much more to go. And tapping into that part of my brain, I had never done that before. I'd never seen that was possible. And so finishing that course and coming back and realizing I had just barely stepped into that world and started exploring ideas around other mountain ranges to go to and other objects, essentially mountains that could be climbed, and realizing, oh, I actually need to have skills to do that, like to do it safely. And there's a whole body of knowledge that I don't know anything about. And yeah, so then I just went down the rabbit hole and just kept going and going and going. And at that time, we were pre-internet. So at that time, the learning was either direct from a course or from some sort of workshop experience or a mentor, or it's through a book. And then it was trial and error. So I believe I cut my teeth in the mountains by making a lot of mistakes and a lot of failure. My failure rate in the beginning of my career was incredibly high. And not because I was making like forced errors in technical terrain that was dangerous. It was more just like I didn't know anything about weather. I didn't know anything about training, really how to tap in, how to understand what my body could and couldn't handle. Like what was fatigue and what was muscle fatigue like 3 days after working hard, so that I wouldn't be in a position to summit because I was so exhausted by that. Just skills I just didn't have. And then to come back into the mental clarity space, and also this awareness around fear. How did fear play into my experiences in the mountains? Like to go into these bigger mountain ranges and realize that I just feel shut down, like I was way over my head and just afraid. And those lessons were significant in those early years.
Did you ever have a moment or a trip that you were out where the fear literally paralyzed you, like you could go no further?
Yes and no. I think early on, the answer is yes, until I could really work out the systems that I was utilizing and trust that the systems that I used 100 feet off the ground were the same systems 1,000 feet off the ground. They didn't change at all. So early on, just recognizing that the safety systems and security systems, the rope systems, it doesn't matter. Didn't matter if it was 100 feet or 1,000 feet. So that awareness. The other significant awareness that took place was that even on the biggest mountains of the world, the very first step that you take at the base of the mountain as you begin to climb, it always looks the same. Like there's always a point where there's some transition from hiking trail or snow or something into that environment. And that, like when I say it looks the same, like literally that 15 by 15 foot cleared space where other people have stood, or snow's trampled down, or there's no vegetation growing there because that's where the rock meets the earth, and people have been putting their packs down and ropes down, and they always look the same. And so those first climbing moves are just 10 feet of rock. If you don't look at the next 1,000 feet, you only look at the first 10 feet, it looks like and so the realization is that all of these things start the same way. They're just longer. And that allows you to like break it down into small chunks so that I only have to climb 100 feet at a time. Just that first 100 feet and then the next 100 feet. So if I skip ahead and think about the last 100 feet, that'll lock me down from and feel frozen in fear, right? But if I just look at it as like, it's like, I mean, if you eat a meal, you can't think about like, you're not gonna eat the whole thing in one bite. It's just small little bites along the way. Like the axiom about how do you eat an elephant, it's like one bite at a time.
Yeah.
The same thing. Yeah.
So it was kind of a mix, it sounds like, of gaining technical expertise, gaining experience that things turn out okay, and just, I guess, exposure to the fear itself. I mean, was it just enough of that over time that you end up, okay, now I just finished a climb that's significantly higher than I ever thought I could do?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of exposure therapy where, if you took me today, right now, I just instantly was put at the top of the Empire State Building, right on the edge, that'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
I would feel incredible fear, and my body would be completely hijacked by the exposure and the height. But if I transitioned from here to there, in 10-foot increments, over time, my body would adjust, my eyes would adjust, my mental ability to be able to make sense of that would adjust over time slowly, so that by the time I got to the top, I wouldn't feel that overwhelm. And I think the same thing happens in the mountain environment, which is this, you're slowly exposed, and through that slow exposure, things become more normalized. And what would typically create that sense of fear and anxiety doesn't, because you've been operating in that environment. I'd say it's similar to having a difficult conversation with someone.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never exposed your experience or your truth or your pain or your difficulty with another, and you've always treated it as everything is totally fine, it's incredibly anxiety provoking to then say, I need to have this difficult conversation with this person, because they're not going to have any background of what your experience is like. And that's incredibly challenging. But if over time you're accustomed to sharing what your experience is like, and they are too, then when it's time for a difficult conversation, you're accustomed to it. You know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a parallel there, which is the more we expose ourselves to environments that are challenging and create anxiety and create fear, and then we can work through them and realize I am actually totally okay in this environment. I'm it didn't kill me. I'm still breathing. My heart's still beating, and I can think clearly. Then you can parlay that into other aspects of your life that are also fear-inducing.
Yeah, that I love that. And as someone that I mean, honestly, spent chunks of my life avoiding conflict out of just it's uncomfortable. Let's just get along. Then having to have that confrontation and knowing that it's coming is absolutely paralyzing. But the more that I've done it, and like you just said, you realize I didn't die, right?
Right.
That the person
Right.
didn't kill me. It actually worked out really well. The relationship is stronger because of it.
And there's
I
the
think
irony, right? Is that
it is the
the
irony.
resolution
Absolutely.
actually feels good. Like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
resolution feels good, and it actually is strengthening. And so part of the adventure, like looking at life through the model of adventure and through that lens, is that we're working to rewire what is our habitual response, which is conflict is bad.
Yeah.
And my take here is, well, conflict and challenge actually does serve a purpose. And in that purpose that it serves is it elicits the better part of ourselves forward. It forces that to be the case. It forces you to have those challenging conversations. If you're in a mountain environment and you're not speaking your truth, if you're not saying, today I don't feel well, or I'm really tired and I could use some help with, can you take 5 pounds off my pack? If you're not expressing yourself and withholding, then that's a danger to yourself and to others and the success of the trip. And so it forces you to be able to be vulnerable in a way that our daily lives don't. And yet we need to have those practices so that we can have the types of conversations you're referring to.
Yeah, it's not hard for me to see how you make these life connections through doing hard things, and you're using different canvases to create the artwork in people's life. But I absolutely can see where those connections overlay. And have you seen it be really significantly life-changing? Meaning, do these things stick? The people that you take on and have these literal mountaintop experiences, when they get back down to the valley, are these life lessons that stick, or do they go back to the habituated behaviors that got them there in the first place?
No, they stick, and they stick because it becomes an embodied experience with the physicality of climbing.
That's the
As
difference.
opposed to just a thought experiment. Yeah. And the moments that I see it stick, it's textbook, and I can place bets on it. It is after the summit experience, whether it's to the top or not to the top, because sometimes you can't summit because of whatever conditions or physical, health, whatever it is. It's the return back to high camp, watching the sunset, taking it all in, and then being intentional about what the next steps are. So those summit climbs, typically it's in the dark to start. You got a headlamp on. All you can see is where your feet are looking at, stars above, and you're in your head. And so you're processing and you're sitting with being away from home, whatever you're ruminating on, and you gain just this clarity of what is truly important. How am I moving through the world? And is this actually how I want to show up? And then when people go through that, and then they have the physical experience of exhaustion attached to it, it creates this level of clarity that you can't replicate in any other way. And what I see people doing at that time is a lot of journaling, letter writing, sending texts to loved ones, making decisions that are like, this profession or vocation doesn't work for me, and I need to change this aspect. Or I'm no longer willing to commute 90 minutes each way, give up all of this time in my life to sitting in a car or on a bus or whatever it is for this lifestyle, because I'm not even present with my family any longer. Or you can slice and dice that however many ways to think about, like, what are the drivers of existential crisis. And what I endeavor to do is to support men through those existential questions so that they don't blow up their lives in midlife crisis, as opposed to burning through cash, making purchases, addictive behaviors, acting out in certain ways, like to curb that sideways behavior that can occur, and instead redirect and present it in a way that is actually in alignment with how they want to show up in the world.
Yeah.
And to answer the question, like, with finality, is it works. It really actually truly works.
Now, you've been doing this long enough that I think you've got enough examples to know whether it does or not. And this is something I wrote down from one of your posts that said, I'm committed to changing the narrative of what it means to be a man in today's world, one that includes vulnerability, connectedness, and life purpose. And I think you just described some of that, of how that plays out in these pursuit of hard things. So the people that are going out with you are choosing to sign up to go put themselves in a pressure cooker in a way that they've never done before, hoping that something changes in their life, something changes internally in them that shifts the needle a little bit. But I'd love for you to kind of expand on this idea of, and maybe do it this way. What is the prevailing definition of manhood as you see it? And how is your definition different?
I would say that my definition and approach is living with intentionality and purpose, period. So it's the clarity to decide how a man wants to show up in the world, what actions he wants to take, what energy he wants to bring, and then being unflappable in that presentation. So regardless of external circumstance, to be able to remain conscious and aware in thought and action during difficulty and challenge. And the addition I would add to that is to do no harm, and to do so in support of those around him, to those that his family and community. So there's a service aspect that's beyond the self. But what I have found with men currently is many men are burnt out and exhausted and resentful because of a pattern of being in service to others without clarity as to why and without feeding their own needs.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's, I think, a man that is on point, has a strong foundation and clarity of vision and action, can only get there by also recognizing his own needs and feeding that. And that can only be denied for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's actually a topic that me at 45 is very interested in. And a couple books that have stood out to me recently is Arthur Brooks' From Strength to Strength, and then David Brooks, no relation. I'm about halfway through his book called The Second Mountain. But this idea of first half versus second half living, and the things that got me here aren't the things that are going to get me there, as far as what do I want to be at the end of my life versus the skills and things that I've accumulated up to 45. And I'm saying that as a kind of a foundation for a question for you with the men that come to you, and is it only men, or do you have women in your groups as well? But is it those kind of things where the earthly goals, or the things that they were told that were going to bring satisfaction and joy and happiness, they get long enough in the tooth to realize that they do not bring satisfaction, joy, and happiness? Is it the people that have enough age under them that come to you and say, okay, what else is there? Is it a pretty common thread there?
Yeah, so I'll answer one of those questions, which was, do I only work with men or do I work with women as well? Keynotes, delivery, that kind of thing on these topics is across the board, open to everyone. And I typically work with men, but I'd say it's 90-10%
Okay.
men to women. But I think the overarching, David Brooks' piece on this is excellent. And I think the overarching message here is that the endeavor is not incorrect. Like, the actions themselves can remain as they are. It's the relationship to those actions which has to shift and change.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we'll use the commute guy. If he is, unhealthy, wasting away, gaining weight, not fit, goes to work exhausted, comes home exhausted, unavailable to his family, and that resentment is building, then that action is not of value to him or his family. If his relationship to that shifts and changes, and his behavior changes, and he still remains, in the commute, then it becomes of value again. So I think what ends up happening in these existential crisis moments, midlife crisis for men, is that we tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just like, fuck it, and just burn it down, as opposed to having the clarity to step back and like, well, there is a space in between. I don't have to burn it down, but I also don't have to keep the status quo. There is a solution in between.
Yeah, and that's
difficult
wise
for us to hold.
Yeah, that feels very wise. What it certainly is easier to just burn it all down, right? I mean, light the match and let's go.
Oh, absolutely. You can burn it down, but and I think one of the most significant benefits of this work, is when I'm on expedition in community with men, or leading a group of men on a virtual coaching space, is that there is accountability and relationship development to be able to get feedback from other men who have been there and done experiences similar, and can also take a step back and help correct in a way that is an invitation, as opposed to us as men siloing ourselves and saying, oh, we got to come up with a solution ourselves. We got to figure out, I can't expose myself to this. I can't let someone else know that this is truly what's happening.
Yeah.
There's shame and embarrassment around that. So to remove that, then we can move beyond the binary solution. I do see lots of men who crave and want a different solution and are terrified to make those adjustments.
Yeah.
And would rather just be in the certainty of pain and discomfort than to move into the uncertainty of what else is available to them.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
that
a
is
painful
again
place for
a
people to be.
paradox that it's a paradox that I've done it at times in my own life, and I see it in friends and colleagues. And as an outsider looking into it, you go, why does a human being choose that?
Mhm.
And then the other side of the coin is, why does a human being choose to make themselves suffer so much in pursuit of, something like going to the top of a mountain or going on a long
Mhm.
hike or taking it, even like taking a vacation with your family that you haven't done in 10 years? That would be an adventure, right? If you've been so
Absolutely.
locked into
Yeah.
work. But I
It's
don't know.
amazing sorry.
I was going to say, I don't know a man that I'm acquainted with that wouldn't be fired up to have living with intentionality and purpose at like tattooed across the forehead, right? I mean, that is something to get out of bed for every morning. But I know a lot of guys that
Absolutely.
have not a lot. I know some guys that at different times in their lives have struggled getting out of bed because there's no purpose for the day or there's no drive to go do something.
Well, I think that hits on a question that you brought up earlier, which is kind of why adventure and why now? And in this, in our current state of the world, we don't have to adventure and we don't have to face challenge very often, if at all. And yet there is an innate drive in men and women as well. But as a man, I can really only speak from my own experience, in men to go out and engage in the adventure. Like
Yeah.
that's like there's this to go on the to go into uncertainty and to go for challenge and to see what happens. And that when you start to remove that from our daily experience, I think you have two responses. One is the pain associated with not having those sorts of expeditionary experiences. You're not chasing the dragon.
Hmm.
You don't have a purpose to get up anymore because the dragon's already slayed for you.
And you're saying there's pain
Um,
and suffering even in that comfort.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why we create all kinds of different challenges for ourselves that are completely unnecessary. I mean, mountain climbing on its face is a totally unnecessary pursuit. Absolutely unnecessary. Like there's no need to do this, right? It doesn't serve anything beyond the service to the self.
Yeah.
So it becomes a spiritual practice at that point. It's like, why am I doing this? I'm doing this in service to myself so that I can experience the whole breadth of human emotion and learn from that in this microcosm experience, and then be able to show up fully for my family.
Yeah, I love that idea too, that it's providing, even like the analogy of opening a door or window, and the world becomes multicolored instead of
Mm-hmm.
just black and white. And I wonder if that's partly my you would have a much more nuanced understanding of this than I would. But what I understand the brain to be is that the joy and the pain circuits are the same circuits, and that if we're shutting that down for the sake of avoiding the hard thing, that we're also missing the other emotions that make
Mm-hmm.
us human.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
you're muting the entire human experience,
yeah, and who wants that?
which
Nobody wants that, but yet we still do it.
yeah, because we're hard. So we're hardwired to maintain our safety and security, and that that our needs are met: food, water, shelter, clothing, right? And so if we start to perceive every experience as a threat to that, then we're going to try and do everything within our power to maintain that those needs are met at all costs. When
Hmm.
those needs are met and we don't have to put any effort into it anymore, it's very difficult to shift the wiring in your brain to then be open to things that were previously seen as threats. I'm not going to go on an expedition and leave my family behind and leave them exposed to risk, and I'm going to expose myself to risk. And, like the whole thing it doesn't make any sense. But when we realize that those material needs are met, it opens us up to be able to move to the next level of engagement, which is the engagement of self-actualization.
Yeah, that's really cool. In the
It is,
last
yeah.
several minutes that we have, I want to kind of maybe turn the spotlight on you a little bit more than I have up to this point. But at 48 years old, what are you doing in your own life to continue to stretch yourself? You're taking your clients on these guided trips. I'm sure, like anything else, you're getting a lot out of that. You're getting a lot out of the relationships. But beyond that, as work, what do you do in your life to find those limits and to continue to push yourself?
Yeah, so a couple of things are going on in my world right now. I'm building a house right now.
Okay, that'll do it.
It's the second second house that I've built. I've been working on the past year. And I'm doing it myself. I'm,
Oh, wow.
I'm doing the labor, and we've got help for different subcontracting for different aspects of it, but the majority of it is me swinging a hammer and making it happen. So that has become a massive project for me in terms of learning and uncertainty and being open to the awareness that I don't really know anything about what I'm doing, but I'm learning along the way.
This isn't
So
something you've done before?
no, I mean, before this, I could build basic furniture and repair things and, use a saw and cut and put stuff together, but I do home DIY home repair, but no, not in terms of actual building. So that's a big project. And in the adventure space, in the past couple of years, I've been focused on solo ascents of 8,000-meter peaks in the Himalaya. That's
Okay.
been a big project for me. I have sleep apnea, and that has massively impacted how I approach high altitude mountaineering.
I can imagine.
So that, and I've had professional support there, medical professional support, to be able to figure that out. But that's been a part of my journey as well, is how to figure out how to navigate, a big challenging experience with some medical stuff, medical challenges. So those are expeditions. Other expeditions I've been working on with my kids have been kind of multi-elemental things. How to mountain bike somewhere with a trailer with some gear that then leads to a canoeing thing that leads to something else. We're trying to put all these different skills together. So at this stage in my life, I'm trying to do a little bit of both, realizing that I'm at a place where I can pass on knowledge to my clients and wisdom, provide experiences for my kids, while also knowing I need to support myself as well.
Yeah. So the 8,000-meter peaks, which ones have you tackled any yet? And what do you have coming up next?
Yeah, my next one that I have coming up is Cho-Yu this fall. It's in a couple weeks. So that'll be my third. And the challenges there have been, logistical with travel and family. And it comes at a time when it's not advantageous for me to leave. And so setting that up in a way that's been a big part of it as well. And I work with this with my clients all the time, is that there is no good time to go. There's no good time I'm running a trip on Kilimanjaro this December, and it's between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it's like, well, trying to create a time that actually is time to go. But there's no good time when it comes to anyone's schedules. We all have full demands, and we have to pull the ripcord and just create a space for ourselves. So just like I see it, my own clients, I reflect back, which is I have to create time as well. I have to carve out and protect that time. Otherwise, it will be filled in with other demands. And so creating time for myself and these pursuits is the most challenging thing. And it's also the very thing that I ask my clients to do as well. So
yeah, I would imagine
good learning.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to put a bow on this, but I would imagine you would not have the force to bring to bear with your clients if you didn't fill your own bucket first, and probably the same
And if I
with,
didn't know what it was like to make the ask,
yes.
right?
Yeah. Yep. So it's kind of the follow me mentality rather than telling people what they should be doing. And that's good. Any good leader, if someone's asking you to do something they've never done on their own, I don't listen to that for very long, right?
No,
Whether
no.
it's a business consultant or a life coach or anybody else giving advice, there has to be kind of the experience chops behind it to give it weight. And so I'm excited to hear more about how that goes for you.
Thank
And
you.
I'll end this with giving you the opportunity to let folks know how they can find you. I found you on social media, but what's the easiest way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So, well, first in the show notes, let's throw a link in there to the 5 elements of adventure so that folks can
Perfect.
get a
Yeah.
direct link to understand what that is a little bit more. But yeah, Matt Walker Adventure is one word, mattwalkeradventure.com, and socials, Matt Walker Adventure on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, and we'll put a link in there as well to a PDF about how to manage and approach this feeling of burnout and exhaustion and overwhelm.
That's cool.
Specifically for men. But I will say this is my inbox is open, and whether you would want to work with me or not is beside the point. When people reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, what about this? I've kind of always been curious about going on an adventure and doing this. My inbox is open. And what I mean by that is that I may be a person to help you out with that, but chances are I'm actually probably not the person to help you, but I may know the person or be in connection with someone that can help you as a resource. So the more that we utilize each other's wisdom and knowledge, the easier our life becomes. So the less siloed we become. So
I love that.
if you have an idea around an adventure that's curious for you, reach out and let me help you make it decrease the friction a little bit and put you in touch with the right people.
Awesome. Well, Matt, you've been very generous with the time given to, basically a complete stranger up to this point, but hopefully we won't stay that way. And I'd love to stay in contact and see what else you're up to.
Agreed. Thanks for your time, Josh.
All right. Talk to you soon. All right. Thanks for listening. And I sincerely mean that because I'm extremely grateful that you choose to spend this time with me. I don't take it for granted, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more content like this, be sure to check out material on my website at ridgelinewealthadvisors.com. That's advisors with an ORS. And sign up for my monthly newsletter, The Money Trail Guide, which you can find on the blog page. Until next time, I hope you pursue your own great adventure.